The pub was called The Blind Beggar in Whitechapel, East London. It was March 19th, 1966, just before closing time. The place was packed, working men having their last drinks, some locals playing darts, the usual Saturday night crowd. At the bar stood two men having a conversation that was getting louder by the minute. One was Reggie Kray, 32 years old, immaculately dressed in an expensive suit, nursing a scotch. The other was Danny the Hammer Morrison, 28 years old, British heavyweight boxing champion, wearing a tracksuit, drinking beer. Danny was telling a story, talking loudly enough that half the pub could hear. So this gangster type comes into the gym, thinks he's tough because he's got a reputation on the streets. But I tell him straight, street fighting isn't real fighting. It's just brawling. No technique, no discipline, just thugs throwing wild punches, hoping something lands. Someone near the bar mentioned, "You talking about the Krays?" Danny grinned. "I'm talking about anyone who thinks they're tough because they hurt people who can't defend themselves. Real fighting, that's what I do. In the ring, under rules, against trained opponents. Not beating up shop-keepers who can't pay protection money." The pub went quiet because everyone knew Reggie Kray was standing 15 feet away. Everyone knew Danny Morrison was talking about him, even if he hadn't said the name directly. Reggie set down his drink, walked over to Danny calmly. No rush, no aggression in his movements, just purposeful. "Danny Morrison, the heavyweight champion. I've seen you fight. You're good, technical, fast for a big man. But let me ask you something. You think what you do in the ring, with gloves, with a referee, with rounds and breaks, you think that prepares you for real violence?" Danny turned to face Reggie. "More than whatever you do. Street fighting isn't fighting. It's just cheap shots and gang attacks." Cheap shots? That's interesting. Because in a real fight, not in a ring with rules, but in the street where there are no rules, cheap shots are the smart play. Fighting fair is how you lose. Then you're not a fighter. You're just a thug. Reggie smiled. The same dangerous smile people who knew him had learned to fear. "Tell you what, champ, let's test your theory. You and me. Tomorrow, private location. We settle this question about who's really tough, ring fighters or street fighters. You interested?" Danny laughed. "You want to fight me? A professional boxer? You're insane." "Maybe. But I'm willing to prove it. Are you? Or are all those stories about how tough you are just talk?" The entire pub was watching now. Danny Morrison had a choice. Back down and look weak in front of dozens of witnesses, or accept the challenge and risk getting hurt by a man with a vicious reputation. Danny made his decision. "Okay, tomorrow. But bare knuckle, no gloves. That's street rules, right? Let's see how tough you really are when you're not surrounded by your gang." "Agreed. Bare knuckle. Just you and me? Tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m. I'll have someone contact you with the location. Don't bring anyone. Come alone. We handle this like men." This is the story of what happened when a professional boxing champion challenged Reggie Kray to a fight. The story of how Reggie prepared for that confrontation, and the story of why the boxing champion left that fight with a broken jaw and a completely new understanding of what violence really means. To understand this story, you need to understand both men. Danny the Hammer Morrison was a legitimate boxing champion. He'd started being at age 12 in a local gym in Liverpool, showed natural talent, won amateur championships, turned professional at 19. By age 28, he was British heavyweight champion, had won the title in 1964, and successfully defended it 3 times. Danny was 6 feet 2 inches, weighed about 210 pounds, was in peak physical condition. He trained 6 days a week, had excellent technique, good footwork, powerful jab, devastating right hand that had knocked out 12 of his 16 professional opponents. But Danny had a problem: arrogance. His success in the ring had convinced him that boxing was the ultimate form of fighting, that trained fighters were superior to anyone else, that street fighters were just untrained thugs who wouldn't last 30 seconds against a real boxer. This attitude had gotten Danny into trouble before. He'd gotten into bar fights, street confrontations, always emerging victorious because he was bigger, stronger, and better trained than whoever challenged him. But Danny had never fought someone like Reggie Kray. Reggie Kray was a different kind of fighter. He'd been an amateur boxer in his youth, actually quite good. Won multiple amateur titles in the late 1940s and early 1950s. Had been offered professional contracts, but chose the criminal life instead. But Reggie had never stopped training. Even in his early 30s, he still ran every morning, still worked to the heavy bag, still sparred occasionally with professional fighters who owed the Krays their favors or wanted their protection. More importantly, Reggie had been in hundreds of street fights. Real fights, where there were no rules, no referee, no stopping when someone got hurt. Fights where biting, eye gouging, groin shots, and any other tactic were acceptable if they helped you win. Reggie understood something Danny didn't. Ring fighting and street fighting are completely different. In the ring, you fight one person under agreed rules, with breaks between rounds. In the street, you fight to survive, using any method necessary, ending the confrontation as quickly as possible. Reggie was 5 feet 8 inches, maybe 165 pounds, smaller than Danny by 5 inches and 45 pounds. On paper, he had no chance. But Reggie didn't fight on paper. He fought in reality. After leaving the Blind Beggar, Reggie went to his gym, a private facility the Krays owned, where they trained and held meetings. His twin brother Ronald was there with several associates. "I heard you got into it with Danny Morrison," Ronald said. "Well, the boxer. You really challenging him to a fight?" "Yeah, tomorrow, just him and me, bare knuckle." "Reggie, he's a professional, heavyweight champion. He'll destroy you if you fight him straight up." "I'm not fighting him straight up. I'm fighting him smart. There's a difference." Reggie spent the next hour working out. Not training to box. He knew he couldn't outbox a champion. Training to hurt someone. Practicing dirty tactics. Working on combinations that targeted vulnerable areas. Throat, groin, knees, eyes. One of the associates, a man named Mickey who'd been a street fighter himself, watched Reggie train and understood what he was doing. You're not going to fight him clean, are you? Of course not. He's bigger, younger, better trained in boxing. If I fight him clean, I lose. So I fight him dirty. Use every advantage I have. Experience, viciousness, willingness to do things he won't do. That's how you beat someone better than you. You change the game. What if he complains, says you fought unfairly? Reggie smiled. He agreed to bare knuckle, agreed to street rules. There is no unfair in street rules. There's just winning and losing. He'll learn that tomorrow. The fight was arranged for 2 p.m. on March 20th, 1966, at a warehouse in East London that the Krays controlled. The space was empty, just concrete floor, some old crates, and plenty of room for 2 men to fight. Danny Morrison arrived at 1:50 p.m. He came alone, as agreed. Walked into the warehouse and found Reggie already there, along with Ronald Kray and about 6 other men. I thought you said come alone, Danny said. I said you should come alone. I didn't say I'd be alone. These are witnesses. To make sure we both honor the rules we agreed to. What rules? I thought this was bare knuckle, no rules. Exactly. Bare knuckle. No gloves, no referee, no rounds. Just fight until one of us can't continue. That's the rule. And these gentlemen are here to make sure neither of us tries to back out once things get difficult. Danny looked around at the Kray associates. All of them were hard men, ex-fighters, ex-convicts, people who'd seen and done violence. Danny suddenly realized he might have made a mistake accepting this challenge. But backing out now, in front of these witnesses, would destroy his reputation, would make him look like a coward. He had to go through with it. Fine. Let's do this. Both men removed their shirts. Danny was impressively muscled, the body of a professional athlete. Reggie was leaner, harder, scarred from decades of street fights. 2 very different physical specimens. 2 very different types of fighters. Ronald Kray stood between them. Rules are simple. No weapons. Fight ends when one man can't continue. Everything else is allowed. Understood? Both men nodded. Then fight. Danny started. Conventionally, boxing stance, hands up, moving with good footwork. He was treating this like a boxing match, waiting for the right opportunity to throw a combination. Reggie moved differently. Lower stance, hands not quite in boxing position, moving in a way that suggested he might do anything. Punch, kick, grab, whatever worked. Danny threw the first punch, a quick jab designed to measure distance and set up his right hand. The jab was technically perfect. Fast, accurate. Reggie slipped it easily. Years of training hadn't disappeared. He still had good defensive instincts. Danny threw another jab, then a right hand. The right hand was powerful, would have knocked out most men. But Reggie wasn't where the punch was aimed. He'd moved, circled, changed angles. Danny started to realize this wasn't going to be as easy as he'd thought. Reggie had real defensive skills, knew how to move, knew how to avoid punches. But Danny was confident. He was bigger, had more power, had better conditioning. He just needed to land clean, and this would be over. Danny threw a 3-punch combination: jab, right hand, left hook. All technically beautiful, all powerful. Reggie blocked the jab, slipped the right hand, then stepped inside the left hook. And that's when Danny learned what dirty fighting really meant. As Reggie stepped inside Danny's left hook, he drove his shoulder into Danny's chest. Not a punch, just a hard body check that knocked Danny slightly off balance. Then Reggie grabbed Danny's left arm with both hands and yanked it downward, while simultaneously driving his knee up into Danny's ribs. The impact was brutal. Danny felt something crack. Not a broken rib, but definitely bruised. The pain was immediate and sharp. Danny tried to back away, reset, get back into his boxing stance. But Reggie didn't let him, stayed close, crowded Danny's space, made it impossible for Danny to use his reach advantage or his technical pacing skills. Reggie threw a punch at Danny's face. Danny blocked it. Good defensive instinct. But the punch was a feint. The real attack was Reggie's foot, stomping down on Danny's instep with all his body weight. Danny yelled in pain, stepped back, limped slightly. His foot hurt like hell. "What the hell was that?" Danny demanded. "That's fighting," Reggie said calmly. "No rules, remember? You agreed to that." Danny was furious now. Threw a wild right hand, trying to end this immediately with one big punch. The punch was powerful, but telegraphed. Reggie saw it coming, ducked under it, and drove his fist into Danny's liver. Danny had been hit in the liver before, in training, in sparring, in fights. But those were gloved punches with some protection. Reggie's bare knuckle strike to his liver was different. The pain was nauseating. Made Danny's legs weak, made him want to vomit. Reggie didn't follow up immediately, just moved back slightly, let Danny recover enough to continue. This wasn't about ending the fight quickly. This was about teaching Danny a lesson. "You're learning now," Reggie said. "Boxing is a sport. This is survival. Different rules, different strategies, different outcome." Danny tried to adapt, tried to fight dirtier himself, threw some low blows, tried to grab and clinch. But he was improvising. Reggie had decades of experience with this type of fighting. Every time Danny tried something, Reggie countered with something worse. Danny tried to grab Reggie's arm. Reggie bit his hand, not hard enough to do serious damage, but hard enough to make Danny let go immediately. Danny tried to kick. Reggie caught his leg and punched Danny's exposed groin before letting the leg go. The fight was becoming one-sided. Not because Reggie was a better boxer, he wasn't, but because Reggie was a better fighter. He understood how to hurt people efficiently, how to target vulnerable areas, how to use every part of his body as a weapon. Danny was bleeding from multiple places: nose, lip, a cut above, his eye from an elbow strike. He was breathing hard. His ribs hurt. His foot hurt. His liver hurt. He was discovering that professional boxing conditioning didn't prepare you for the sustained violence of a street fight. Reggie, by contrast, was barely marked. A few scratches, some red marks where Danny had landed punches, but nothing serious. He was controlling the pace, controlling the distance, controlling everything. "You want to quit?" Reggie asked. Not mocking, just genuinely asking. "You can walk away right now. Say you learned your lesson. No shame in that." "Screw you," Danny gasped. "I'm not quitting." "Okay. But remember, you chose this." Danny threw everything he had left into one final combination. Multiple punches in succession. Some landed. Reggie took them. They hurt, but he could absorb them. Then Reggie countered. Reggie grabbed the back of Danny's head with both hands, like a Thai clinch in Muay Thai, and pulled Danny's face down while simultaneously driving his knee up. But Reggie didn't aim for Danny's face. He aimed for Danny's chest and solar plexus. Multiple knee strikes. Fast. Brutal. Each one driving the air out of Danny's lungs. Danny tried to break free, couldn't. Reggie's grip was too strong, too controlled. Danny was trapped, being methodically destroyed by knee strikes. Finally, Reggie released him. Danny stumbled backward, gasping for air, completely exhausted, beaten down, but still standing out of pure stubbornness. "Last chance," Reggie said. "Quit now or I finish this." "Do your worst," Danny wheezed. Reggie nodded. "All right." Reggie closed the distance one final time. Danny tried to defend, but he was too tired, too hurt. Reggie threw a combination, body shot, then an uppercut to Danny's chin. The uppercut was perfect. Caught Danny clean, snapped his head back. But more importantly, it broke Danny's jaw. The crack was audible in the warehouse. Danny collapsed. Not knocked unconscious, but incapacitated by pain. Lying on the concrete floor, holding his jaw, unable to continue. Reggie stood over him, not gloating, not celebrating, just looking down at the man who'd challenged him. "You're tough," Reggie said. "You lasted longer than I expected. Took more punishment than most men could take. But you learned today that ring fighting and street fighting are different. In the ring, you're a champion. In the street, you're just another guy who doesn't understand how violence really works." Danny Morrison was taken to a hospital. Told doctors he'd been in a car accident. The story agreed upon to avoid police involvement. His jaw was indeed broken. Required surgery. Had his jaw wired shut for 6 weeks. Danny never spoke publicly about what happened in that warehouse. Never told anyone the real story of how he got injured. Just said he'd had an accident, took time off from boxing to recover. But privately, the story spread throughout London's underworld and boxing community. Everyone knew Danny Morrison had challenged Reggie Kray to a fight, and Reggie had destroyed him, broken his jaw, taught the champion a lesson about the difference between sport fighting and real fighting. Danny's boxing career continued after his recovery, but something had changed. He was more cautious, less arrogant, more respectful when people talked about street fighters or gangsters. He'd learned a lesson that day in the warehouse, a painful, humiliating lesson, but one that probably saved his life in future years. Because Danny never challenged someone like Reggie Kray again. Never dismissed street fighters as just thugs. Recognized that different types of fighting required different skills, and that being good at one didn't automatically make you good at another. Years later, in 1997, Reggie Kray was interviewed in prison about various incidents from his life. The interviewer asked about the Danny Morrison fight. "That story's mostly true," Reggie said. "Danny was a good boxer, legitimate champion. Could have knocked me out if I'd fought him in a boxing match, under boxing rules, but I didn't fight him under boxing rules. I fought him under my rules." The difference between boxing and street fighting is simple. Boxing has limits, things you can't do, areas you can't hit, ways you can't attack. Those limits make boxing a test of specific skills: footwork, hand speed, power, endurance. Street fighting has no limits. Everything is allowed, which means it's not about being the most skilled boxer. It's about being the most willing to hurt someone, the most vicious, the most ready to do things other people won't do. I'd been in hundreds of street fights by the time I fought Danny. I'd bitten people, gouged eyes, hit groins, used elbows, knees, headbutts, whatever worked. I'd learned that winning ugly is still winning. And Danny hadn't learned that. He was used to fighting clean, fighting with honor, fighting under rules. So when we fought, I took away all his advantages, got close so he couldn't use his reach or power, used dirty tactics he wasn't prepared for, broke down his body systematically, and eventually I broke his jaw to end it. I didn't enjoy it, didn't take pleasure in hurting him, but he'd insulted me publicly, challenged me. I had to respond, had to show that my reputation was earned, that I wasn't just talk. Danny gave me that opportunity, and I took it. Do you regret it? Reggie was quiet for a moment. No, Danny needed to learn that lesson. Better to learn it from me, someone who broke his jaw but let him live, than learn it from someone who'd kill him. I actually did him a favor, in a way. Made him humble, made him smart, probably saved his life down the road. In 1985, 19 years after the fight, Danny Morrison visited Reggie Kray in prison. Danny was 47 years old, retired from running a gym in London. Reggie was 51, serving his life sentence for murder. They sat across from each other in the prison visiting room. Danny spoke first. "I wanted to come here before it's too late, to say something I should have said a long time ago." "What's that?" Reggie asked. "Thank you." Reggie looked surprised. "Thank you? For breaking your jaw?" "For teaching me a lesson I needed to learn. After our fight, I was angry, humiliated, hated you for what you did. But over the years, I realized something. You were right. I was arrogant. Thought my boxing skills made me invincible. That attitude would have gotten me killed eventually. You humbled me, made me understand that violence is more complicated than I thought. That being tough in one context doesn't mean you're tough in all contexts. That lesson made me more careful, more respectful, probably saved me from making stupid decisions that would have gotten me hurt or killed. So yeah, thank you for being exactly as brutal as you needed to be to teach me what I needed to learn. Reggie nodded slowly. You're welcome. And for what it's worth, you took that beating better than most men would have. You've got real courage. I respected that then, and I respect it now. The two men talked for another hour. About boxing, about street fighting, about violence and respect, and lessons learned the hard way. By the end of the visit, they'd reached an understanding. Not quite friendship, but mutual respect between two men who'd once tried to destroy each other. Danny Morrison died in 2008 at age 70 from a heart attack. Reggie Kray had died 8 years earlier, in 2000. Both men took the full story of their fight to their graves. But the legend remained. The story of how a boxing champion challenged a gangster and learned the hardest way possible that ring fighting and street fighting are two completely different worlds. That wraps it up for today. March 1966. Boxing champion Danny Morrison insulted Reggie Kray in a pub, called him a thug, challenged him to fight. Reggie accepted. Bare knuckle. No rules. The next day they fought in a warehouse. Danny thought his boxing skills would dominate. But Reggie fought dirty. Used every street tactic. Elbows, knees, groin shots, biting. Systematically broke down the bigger, stronger boxer. Ended it by breaking Danny's jaw with an uppercut. Danny learned that boxing and street fighting are different worlds. Reggie proved that viciousness and experience beat technique when there are no rules. If this story shocked you, drop a comment below. Subscribe for more true stories where reality destroyed expectations. See you in the next one.